Sawadee-kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group where we study the words of the Buddha in English from the Pali Canon. We always start out these sessions with a brief meditation to kind of help prepare the mind for studying the Pali Canon. So I'd like to welcome you to our meditation session, and you're welcome to stick around for the study of the Pali Canon. If you don't have this book that we're studying from, I'll actually be displaying it on the screen so you'll still be able to learn. And it's a really interesting book along with all the others because this book has some of the most important teachings from the Buddha related to meditation. So if you've ever been interested in exactly what did the Buddha teach related to meditation, this would be a great class for you, because we're going to go through chapter 1 through 16 in this book. It's titled Buddha Vajana Ānāpānasati, which is essentially breathing mindfulness meditation. And there's other meditations that the Buddha references in these teachings as well. So we're going to start with our meditation, doing breathing mindfulness meditation and as a group. And then once we're finished, I'll open things up for any questions that you guys might have. Because all throughout the world, there's people that have acquired a set of these books or have downloaded the PDFs, which are available in our Facebook group. And they've been reading chapters 1 through 16, which only takes about 45 minutes or an hour. And they've been reading those for the last week. And now is the time for us to get together, do some meditation, and then I'll accept any questions that students have related to their studies and where they might have had challenges in understanding how to apply these teachings in their life, or even what the Buddha was actually teaching in those particular chapters. So welcome to our class today. Glad you're here, whether you've been studying with us continuously for many months, or if this is your very first session with us. As I mentioned, you're welcome to stick around for the meditation and also stick around for the class afterwards. So I'd like to invite you to pull up a meditation cushion or do a lying position or standing position where you can get the body comfortable but not luxurious in order for us to start our meditation. Once your body's in position, go ahead and start to erect the upper body if you're in the seated position, and place the hands and arms in a comfortable position. I'll just give some very light guidance here because the people who usually assemble for this class tend to be people who've been learning with me in our group learning program on Sunday and Wednesday and already are familiar with meditation and how to do that. But if you're not familiar, you'll get a little bit of guidance here, and then you can join our other program, which is on Sunday and Wednesday. Once the body's in a comfortable position, the lower body, upper body, and hands and arms, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Taking some nice deep breaths, becoming aware of the breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to do some chanting to ease us into meditation. And if you know these chants, you're welcome to join along. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sankho Sanghang namami. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho. Vicacaranang sammuno sakhato rogavitu anuttero purisa namasati satatawa manusanang Bhuto Bhagavati. Okay, you should be breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Establish a nice consistent breath. Breathing in and out. Your breath should be natural, not necessarily at the same time that I'm cueing the breath. This is your own independent journey. The guidance here is just to remind you of what to be doing during meditation. And then it's up to each student to actually do the work. So breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Focus the mind on the breath. Fixate it on the sound of the breath or the sensation of air moving into the nose. This is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the present moment, the breath. Breathing in and out. If the mind wanders to the past or to the future, if there's any thoughts, ideas, perceptions that come to mind, just cut those off. Let them go. Bring the mind back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. Just focus on the breath, letting go of any thoughts that arise. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหะคะวาพุทธังมหะคะวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนามาสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมพุโนสัคขะโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรภูริสานามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly start coming out of meditation, we'll use the remaining part of our class to allow you guys to ask any questions that you guys have on this book, Ānāpānasati from Buddha Vajana. And if you don't have a copy of this book, you can go to our Facebook group, Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, and in the Files section, there's a menu there on the Facebook group where you can go into the Files section and then download the actual book in PDF format, and you'll have a copy of it. And for our class today, I'll be displaying the book here on the screen, where if you have questions, our moderators, Manal and Bassam, will be looking in Facebook, YouTube, and Zoom in the comment section, and any questions that you guys have, you can put them in there, and they'll get asked and then answered during the course in the online class today. And if you're in if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions that you have directly, so that way you get answers to the questions you have as you have been reading this book throughout this last week. And for those of you guys that haven't had a chance to read this book, if you're just joining us for the first time, then don't worry, because the questions that are going to get asked during the class, you'll actually get a chance to learn, and then you can download the book and actually read it after class, and then perhaps join us next Saturday when we'll be studying chapters 17 through 32, which is the last part of the book, which will take you about 45 minutes or an hour to read. You can study those this upcoming week and then join us for Saturday to get any help that you might need. And if you've never been exposed to the Buddhist teachings at all, and you're just kind of joining this online class or this live stream or this podcast for the first time, I really recommend that you instead join this program. It's called the Group Learning Program that's on Sunday and Wednesday using this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Nibbana. This program on Sunday and Wednesday will help you to build a really solid foundation and a framework to understand the Buddhist teachings more readily. And then after about 6 months or a year of learning and practicing the teachings from this book, then this program would be really good for you to kind of move into. Or if you would like to do both programs at the same time, there are students who do that as well. And if you've got the time for Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday to attend these classes or listen to them on the playback, then you can join into both programs. And those links for the group learning program in the Words of the Buddha program, this Pali Canon and English study group, the links for these to actually join them and get all the registration information should be wherever you're watching this, whether it's in Facebook, YouTube, in our podcast, or what have you. There should be a link for you to be able to click and register for this program and get the materials and resources that you need. So with that, I'll just go ahead and turn this over to Manal and Bassam and all of you to ask any questions that you have on this book, Ānāpānasati.
Yes, Teacher David. Maybe we can start out with something that has been recurring in these chapters of Ānāpānasati, is in mindfulness breathing, of close attention to the actual breathing in long, breathing out, breathing in long, breathing out long, experiencing the whole body, breathing in, experiencing the whole body, breathing out. So one of the results for this training is described in the book, and it's from the book, Dwell, Contemplating Mind and Mind, Ardent, Clearly Comprehending, Mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasure in regard to the world. And also the word equanimity was also used in some of the places in this book. So it is clear that one of the critical pieces here is that concentration and mindfulness of breathing has to be developed. Once this has been cultivated, what benefits can we expect from the training?
Sure. So where this entire book fits in is, this is an extraction from those 45 volumes of books that are the Pali Canon, these very thick teachings. There's a team of people that extracted the most important teachings about meditation into this smaller book for us to learn from. And all of this relates to that 8th step of the Eightfold Path, which is right concentration. In right concentration, in that step, which is the path to enlightenment, you're developing this concentration, this focus, this clarity of mind through training the mind with breathing mindfulness meditation. And as part of that practice, not only are you getting focus, clarity of mind, deeper memory, things like this, but you're also building mindfulness, that 7th step of the Eightfold Path, which is awareness of mind. And that's how I kind of say it in summary. But in reality, this step of the 7th step of right mindfulness breaks down into what we call the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which the Buddha talks about in these teachings within this book. The 4 foundations of mindfulness are the body, feelings, the mind or condition of the mind, and the mental objects. These are the 4 aspects of mindfulness that need to be trained and cultivated in order to attain enlightenment. Because when you're training the mind and breathing mindfulness meditation, you're focused on the breath, and anytime the mind wanders or there's a thought or idea that comes to mind, or the mind goes to the past or the future, the training that the Buddha teaches is to cut off that thought or let it go and focus on the breath. This trains the mind to let go, to let go, to let go, because the primary problem that the Buddha discovered is craving, desire, attachment, where the mind has this mental longing with a strong eagerness, and it wants to hold on to things so tightly. This is what causes all the discontentedness in the mind, all the anger, sadness, frustration, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy. Every discontent feeling in the mind is all from this same primary problem of craving, desire, attachment, where the mind holds on. So here in breathing mindfulness meditation, we're training the mind to let go, let go, let go, let go over multiple sessions, so that then in daily life, you have not only cultivated concentration, focus, and this clarity of mind and this deep memory, but you've cultivated this awareness of mind where you're aware of the thoughts in the mind, and you've trained the mind to let go of them very easily, so that as you're in daily life and something happens and you start noticing anger arising, then the practitioner can cut that off and let it go very easily, because they've trained that in meditation. And as you get closer and closer, as you progress on this path in the mind through multiple sessions over many months and years, as the mind gets better and better at letting go, and you develop this mindfulness or this awareness of mind, you can then develop awareness of these 4 foundations of mindfulness, which is going to further help you to eradicate discontentedness from the mind. Because when you develop these 4 foundations of mindfulness, where you understand the bodily sensations, or the Buddha calls it body as body, and when you understand the feelings, the Buddha calls it feelings as feelings, and you understand the mind as mind, which I call the condition of the mind, and then the Buddha talks about the mind objects. I call this the mental objects, or the Buddha and I use the same word there as the mind objects or mental objects. So you've got these 4 foundations of mindfulness: body, feelings, mind, and mental objects. Where awareness of these comes into play is that as you've trained the mind in breathing mindfulness meditation to let go, let go, let go over multiple sessions, you start observing in your daily life that there's this 4 kind of aspects of the mind and awareness of mind that happen anytime any particular situation happens. If something's going to happen, you will typically experience bodily sensations first. So if something happens and your mind is going to ultimately get into anger, for example, you're going to feel bodily sensations first. Right now, if you're not noticing those bodily sensations, that's because you don't have awareness of mind. You haven't cultivated right mindfulness enough to recognize and be aware of those bodily sensations. But if you get in touch with that through meditation and through your daily life, those bodily sensations, you feel the pressure in the body, or pressure on the neck, or pressure on the shoulders, or even heart palpitation, or just kind of a tingling sensation rising up in the body. This is the sensations of the body alerting the mind that, hey, there's some anger that's brewing here. And if you have awareness of the body and the bodily sensations, you can cut it off right there. And it never gets into the mind and actually pollutes the mind. And this is actually ideal, but it takes a lot of practice to get to that point. Because if you don't catch it in the bodily sensations, next it's going to move to that next aspect of the mind, which is feelings. It's going to start actually entering the mind, and now it's going to produce feelings in the mind. Feelings of frustration or irritation or anger, for example. And now, once it's in the mind, you can still cut it off there, and you can still let it go if you have awareness that it's arisen in the mind. So you can cut it off and let it go there. But if you don't notice it there, and you just allow the mind to dwell and obsess over this, then it moves into this 3rd aspect of the mind, which is the mental condition, or the condition of the mind, this 3rd foundation of mindfulness, where now this event that happened, you might be stewing over it for 2, 3, 4 days, or even a week or 2. Something that happened like a week or 2 ago, it's still bothering you today. Or something that happened a few hours ago or a few days ago, it's still bothering you today because You didn't catch it in the bodily sensations. You didn't catch it in the feelings. And now you've let it invade the mind, where now it's affected the condition of the mind over a longer period of time. Well, if we don't catch it there, after it's been in the mind, this anger, for example, has been in the mind for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Now you're starting to talk bad to other people, even though the person that, or the situation that caused the anger, or the situation that you were involved in, that the anger arose, even though that's long in the past, you might be going around and now talking badly to other people and your coworkers, your children, your neighbors, and now you're just compounding this issue, creating more and more unwholesome results for yourself, or unwholesome karma, because now there's a mental object in the mind of ill will or hatred. And that is stronger and more rooted in the mind. This is why some people just have hatred and ill will as kind of part of their personality, because they have this mental object of ill will in the mind. And now that's got to be rooted out in order to get to the point where the mind is now clear and it's been purified of all of these unwholesome and unwelcomed thoughts and feelings that arise. So what breathing mindfulness meditation does for you is it trains the mind to let go, to help you reduce and eliminate this craving, desire, attachment. It builds clarity of mind, focus, concentration, deep memory, but it also helps you build this awareness of mind where you can now start noticing these bodily sensations, these feelings, the condition of the mind, and these mental objects, these 4 foundations of mindfulness. So now you can get to the root cause of the problem in any given situation. And when you build enough awareness of mind or mindfulness that you can start catching any kind of bodily sensations before it invades the mind, and you can cut it off there, now you can kind of, wipe your hands of the situation and just move on to the next thing. And the more that you cut it off right there at the bodily sensations, eventually, after doing this enough times and eradicating the craving, desire, attachment that's in the mind, eventually you get to the point where these feelings don't even arise. These bodily sensations don't even arise. This is where the mind's getting closer and closer to enlightenment, where you've been so diligent and you haven't tolerated any unwholesome mental states at all, any unwholesome feelings at all. And every time you see it or feel it coming in the body or coming into the feelings of the mind, you just keep cutting it off and cutting it off and cutting it off in daily life. Now eventually you get to the point where they don't even arise. And this is where the mind is moving closer and closer and getting very close to enlightenment, because the same situation can happen to you that happened a few months ago and you feel nothing. Where in the past you might have felt very enraged or angry and the situation bothered you for a long time, with lots and lots of training, you can get to the point where the same exact thing can happen and it's like, that didn't even bother the mind at all, because this training that you've been under. So this is the fruit and benefit of being able to train in this way. What happens if you're not on this path and you're not attentive of this and you're not using this training is you can go from 0 to 100, meaning enraged, in a split second, where the mind just blows through all of that. It blows through the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, the mental objects, and you go from the situation just occurred to extreme rage in a split second. And this is because there's no mental discipline. There's no control of the mind. But what this practice of breathing mindfulness meditation and all the other steps on the Eightfold Path are doing is training the mind to have wisdom, moral conduct, but then this mental discipline where you can now start controlling the mind and the mind doesn't control you. You can start controlling this, but if you never invest time, effort, energy, and resources into training the mind with breathing mindfulness meditation, you'll never actually get there. So that's why the Buddha prioritized breathing mindfulness meditation so highly as part of his training, because it has so much benefits. And this is like the creme de la creme, or the primary training that we use on this path to enlightenment, but it's not the only training. One of the biggest confusions that we have in the Buddhist community is, in order to get to enlightenment, you can just meditate your way there. But you wouldn't be able to attain enlightenment with only meditation, but you also wouldn't be able to attain enlightenment without meditation either. So while it's very important and it's a primary practice, there's a lot of other things that need to be learned and understood and practiced in order to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, no longer experiencing any discontent feelings whatsoever.
Nick has a two-part question. I'm going to go ahead and ask the second part of his question first for the benefit of everyone. He asks, how are we supposed to breathe? I saw on Facebook group posts 10 to 20 seconds. I am lucky to have 5-second breaths. Are we supposed to just go as slow and deep as we can, focusing on that? But in the book, the Buddha says, I breathe in long, I breathe in short, etc. Are shorter breaths okay, or is it better for focus on making the breath as long and deep as we can?
Long or short is okay, especially if you're just getting started. What the Buddha's talking about here, when he's talking about breathing in long, he knows I breathe in long. Breathing out long, he knows I breathe out long. Breathing in short, he knows I breathe in short. Or breathing in short, or breathing out short, he knows I breathe out short. What the Buddha's talking about here is bring the awareness of the mind to the breath, right? The important part here is he knows. He knows. The practitioner knows. I breathe in long or I breathe in short. He's not telling you that you should breathe in long or you should breathe in short. He's just saying here in his guidance to bring the awareness of the mind to the breath. Because with this whole long aspect of him talking about meditation here, this is actually his guidance. Like when we were just in meditation and I said, take a nice deep breath, breathing in, breathing out. Bring the awareness of the mind to the breath. This is the Buddha actually giving instructions in meditation of what to be aware of. So these first two statements that he's making is just bringing the practitioner's awareness to focus on the breath. Now, in terms of what your breath should be during meditation, is I suggest you work towards a real natural, slow, consistent breath. And I'm going to use my hands here to help you see how to actually breathe, because it's kind of challenging to do online. If you were here in person, or any of you were here in person, I would be able to help you with your body a lot better. But I found this way to use the hands to help you see how I'm breathing. And I've done a couple of different ways here, but I think this way works best. Is if you don't close your eyes, but I'm going to close my eyes. During meditation, if you close your eyes and you're breathing in, and you just notice that you're breathing in, and you just notice that it's fairly short, then what I suggest you do is to slow your breath down without it being controlled, but just kind of slow it down. Because by slowing down the breath, what's going to happen is that by you fixating the mind on the breath with a very slow breath, it will slow the mind down. Because the unenlightened mind tends to be moving very fast and it's very active. And one of the things that you're attempting to do in this training is slow the mind down, right? Because that's how you're going to be able to get focus and clarity. This is how you're going to be able to practice right intention, right speech, right action, is that you slow the mind down and you think through every single thing that you do with singleness of mind. That's one of the things that you're cultivating in right concentration, is developing singleness of mind. Because if your mind's really rapid and really active, you're not going to be able to think and ponder about how to actually practice. You're going to be contemplating 3, 4, 5 decisions all at one time, and you're going to spew out any decision that you make, and it may or may not be the right decision. which can lead to either wholesome or unwholesome results. The goal here is to make better and better decisions. So by slowing the mind down, you're able to actually make better and better decisions that will have better and better results through the Buddha's teachings, more wholesome results. So the Buddha's here just teaching to focus on the breath, but I'm going to teach you now to slow the breath down, because if you're only getting 5 seconds, Nick, we all need to do it better with that. 5 seconds is a bit short, I would say. You really would like to get your inhale and exhale to more of about a 10 seconds on the inhale and then the exhale. And as you're transitioning from the inhale to the exhale, there's kind of like a little bit of time where there's nothing going on, and then you're slipping back into the exhale or the inhale. So watch my hands. This is going to be breathing in, and this is going to be breathing out. Okay? Breathing in and then breathing out. Okay? So this is how I breathe during meditation, to slow it down. And you may need to just do this outside of meditation for a while to practice. Okay? So here we go. Breathing in. Breathing out. Breathing in. Breathing out. Now I did a little bit of talking there as I was coaching the breath, so I'm losing a little bit of air as I'm actually talking and saying breathing in, breathing out. But you see there that it's a very slow, very even pace. I don't feel rushed. I don't feel hurried. I don't feel like the breath is controlled at all. It's just taking a nice gradual breath in and a nice gradual breath out. And I'm never holding the breath. I'm pausing the breath a little bit at the top and the bottom, but I'm not gasping for air at any time, right? I'm not worried that I'm going to stop breathing. I'm just taking some nice deep inhales and exhales, right? So what we can sometimes tend to do in meditation is we take these real abrupt breaths. Right? And we kind of almost hyperventilate. I know I've done this in the past where my breath was very rapid, and that was because the mind was so active. So by slowing down the breath and using the body to do that, keeping the mind fixated on the breath, you'll be able to slow the mind down. That mental activity will slow down more and more and more. Manal, do you have another part to that question?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So he continues to ask, it is repeated in the book, the latter chapters specifically, contemplating relinquishment on towards the fetters, taints, etc. This internal introspection, is it supposed to be thought upon during meditation? I guess I am confused because we are supposed to cut off thoughts during meditation and bring it back to the breath, right?
Right. So there's a couple different things going on here in terms of the Buddhist teachings on meditation. There's the focus on the breath, right? There's the cutting and letting go of thoughts that the Buddha talks about in this book, where you're just focused on the breath, cutting or letting go of the thoughts and bringing it to the breath. This is the foundation of your practice, breathing mindfulness meditation. Whenever you're aware of a thought that arises, you cut it off, let it go, and bring it back to the breath. This is like your foundation. This is your end all be all. Breathing mindfulness meditation. It's just as simple as that. Anytime the mind's off the breath, wherever you notice it, just cut it, let it off, let it go, and bring the mind back to the breath. Well, you develop that for several months, and if you're having trouble with impermanence, for example, one of the things that the Buddha talks about is developing the perception of impermanence. Okay? The way that you do this is there's a couple things you can do. Is you can walk around in your daily life and you can just look everywhere and see impermanence everywhere around you. You're walking on the sidewalk, you see a crack in the sidewalk. Ah, impermanence. You look at a tree, there's green leaves in the tree, there's brown leaves on the ground. Impermanence, You look at pictures of this body when you were a child and look at it now. It's impermanent. It's completely changing. You look at your own children. I know you have children, Nick. You've seen nothing but impermanence in children as they constantly grow. They learn new words. They do new things. So you can train the mind this way in daily life to just really soak in and observe all this impermanence everywhere. Notice how you have an opinion and other people have a difference of an opinion. That's impermanence. Notice how you had certain opinions 5 years ago and those opinions have changed. That's impermanence. You lived in one place, now you move to another place. That's impermanence, right? So that's one way to develop and cultivate the perception of impermanence through daily life and looking all around you. The other way is in meditation. With this breathing mindfulness meditation practice really well established, where you cut off the thoughts and let them go and bring the mind back to the breath, that's your foundation, and that's what you'd like to always be doing as much as possible. But you can also do sessions where, as you're in meditation, as a bodily sensation arises in the body, you can just repeat over and over and over in the mind, it's impermanent, it's impermanent, it's impermanent, it's impermanent. Resist the urge to scratch it, right? And just repeat over and over in the mind, it's impermanent. And eventually you're going to see that bodily sensation will go away. Or if you have a certain feeling that arises in the mind during meditation, in select sessions, not all the time, but just in very few sessions, it's impermanent, it's impermanent, it's impermanent when that feeling arises. You shouldn't need to do this more than a couple of weeks before you really utterly soak into the mind and develop this perception of impermanence, and now come back to your standard breathing mindfulness meditation that you always do, where you cut off the thoughts and focus on the breath. Because you aren't interested in holding on to thoughts in your meditation whatsoever, or really contemplating anything other than just let go, let go, let go. And even don't even repeat that in the mind, because the mind's holding on to that. So the Buddha is talking here, and we're looking at teachings that are written down based on what people remembered after he died. Because remember, during his lifetime for 45 years, he would have been instructing people, much like I'm instructing you now. He would be giving instruction and teaching people how to actually attain enlightenment through his teachings. Nobody wrote anything down. After he died, the enlightened people got together and said, let's write some stuff down, and everything they could remember, they pretty much put down. They didn't put it down in any kind of schematic form. They didn't put it down in any kind of organized way. It just is kind of put throughout all these 45 volumes of books, almost kind of like the Buddha had a conversation with this person and somebody remembered it and they wrote it down. And over here, he had a conversation with this group of people and they wrote it down, right? And these are the suttas. So what you're seeing here in this book is not a step-by-step guide of exactly how the Buddha did meditation. We don't actually have that. It's only practitioners and teachers who have experienced these teachings and lived with them and worked with them and experienced results that we can now tell you exactly what we do in order to experience the benefits of this meditation. So don't look at what you're seeing here in the Pali Canon as a step-by-step guide of what you should be doing during meditation, but we use this to kind of extrapolate what we can do. And there's lots of people that have done that and have experienced results, and now we're putting it into our words to help you understand exactly how to do this, because the Buddha is no longer alive to give that real life guidance of how he would actually guide somebody in meditation. And I think I believe it's 17, is really good at breaking down these individual steps that we have here, these individual statements that the Buddha is making, and what each one of these are for, because each one of these statements are for something different. These two statements here are essentially saying, bring your awareness to the breath. Fixate the mind on the breath. This breathing in long, he knows I breathe in long. Breathing in short, he knows I breathe in short. What that's saying is, he knows the breath. He's focused on the breath, or she, the practitioner. Bring the awareness to the breath. That's the instruction there. This next one, these next couple actually, these three right here, experiencing the whole body, I breathe in. Experiencing the whole body, I breathe out. This is observing the sensations of the body. If any sensations arise in the body, cut them off, let them go. That's what this tranquilizing the bodily formations is. So the first one is saying, if you experience any bodily sensations in the body as you're breathing in, then neutralize them or tranquilize them, meaning let them go. That's what these next two statements are talking about. It's not actually that you should repeat these in the mind. It's not that you should repeat these statements in the mind as you're meditating. It's the Buddha actually giving you guidance that if you experience any bodily sensations in the body, as you notice those, let them go. That's what he's saying in these two statements. Then, now that we've taken care of that first foundation of mindfulness, body and body, now these next two statements are getting to the feelings of the mind. Okay?
Excuse me. Teacher David, do you mind sharing your screen?
Oh, that's right. I need to do that. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, so let me just back up for the people in Zoom. Okay, so these are the first two statements where the Buddha is talking about bring your awareness to the breath. Okay, that's all he's saying there in those first two statements. He knows that he's focused on the breath. So focus on the breath is what he's saying there. These next two statements, the first one is experiencing the whole body, means if you experience bodily sensations in the body during meditation, then tranquilize those bodily formations or neutralize them. Let them go. Okay, so that's what he's saying there. That's the first foundation of mindfulness. So once you've got the mind focused on the breath, which is the first step of meditation, now, as you experience any bodily sensations, let them go. That's what those are getting to. Now, we go into the second foundation of mindfulness, which is feelings as feelings. Experiencing joy, I breathe in. Experiencing joy, I breathe out. Experiencing peacefulness, I breathe in. Experiencing peacefulness, I breathe out. When these feelings arise of joy or peacefulness during your meditation, don't focus on the joy and the peacefulness, because those are the feelings in the mind. What the Buddha is saying here is focus on the breath. Breathe in, breathe out. That's what you're focusing on. So as you're focused on the mind, you feel bodily sensations arise, neutralize those. As you have any feelings of joy or peacefulness arise in the mind, let them go, cut them off, focus on the breath. Okay, that's the way that I guide you in meditation. Then, the next one. Here, the next one is, the third foundation of mindfulness is mind as mind. So as you experience any mental formations, as you experience the condition of the mind during meditation, neutralize it. That's what tranquilize means. Neutralize it. Let it go. Let it go. Just focus on the breath. Breathe in and breathe out. Just let it go. Cut it off. Okay. Then this one here, experiencing the mind, this is the mental objects. Okay, this one, and down to here. Okay, so experiencing the mental objects. As you're experiencing the mind, you're gladdening the mind, you're concentrating the mind's being liberated. You just focus on the breath. And then eventually what he gets to is the contemplation of impermanence. If you're actually doing that in meditation, is if you are observing impermanence and you understand all these things are impermanent, all these bodily sensations, feelings, condition of the mind, mental objects, these are all impermanent. Understand that they're impermanent, focusing on the breath. Now, just let go, let go, let go. This fading away, contemplating elimination, contemplating letting go. He's not literally saying like sit there and think about fading away. What the guidance that I give you in meditation is going through these typically. I'm not explaining bodily sensations, feelings, the condition of the mind and mental objects. I'm just kind of summarizing all that and saying if the mind goes to the past or the future, if you have any thoughts, ideas, or perceptions, just let it all go and focus on the breath. So I'm boiling it down and making it very simple and very easy. But the Buddha was guiding people in the same way, and we're using this language to try to explain what his guidance was. But you shouldn't take this as affirmations that you should be doing during meditation, because that's going to detract you from what the real goal is, which is training the mind to let go. If you're holding on to these affirmations and thinking that that's what the Buddha is actually teaching you to do, you're going to continue to hold on to these affirmations and not be training the mind to let go, which is the whole goal of breathing mindfulness meditation, is to train the mind to let go. So hopefully that helped you guys.
Yes, it does help. Nick also ends by asking Teacher David, how would you define rapture?
Rapture is a word that should really be used as joy. It's some people use rapture or spiritual rapture. Just substitute joy.
Okay, Judith has a question. Chapter 9, page 62.
Okay. Chapter 9. Okay.
She asks, perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive. Could you give some examples?
Yes. Chapter 9. This is the repulsive. Are you sure it's chapter 9, Mano?
She mentions chapter 9. I'm double checking. It's chapter 13, actually.
Okay, chapter 13. Here we go. Okay, this is, I think, down towards the bottom. Here we go. So the question is, give examples of unrepulsive or repulsive.
Okay, perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive.
Okay, so what this whole teaching section is referring to is essentially bringing the mind to the middle. Okay, is that oftentimes what the unenlightened mind is going to do is it sees something repulsive and it wants to push it away, right? And it sees something unrepulsive, or another way to say unrepulsive is pleasurable, and it wants to pull it close, right? So what these statements the Buddha is teaching here is to bring the mind to the middle, where you don't perceive the repulsive as repulsive and push it away, and you don't perceive the unrepulsive or the pleasant as pleasant and you pull it close, but instead you bring the mind to the middle. So something unrepulsive would be something pleasurable. And what he's essentially saying here is reside perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive. So look at the pleasantness in the pleasant things as something that you don't desire, that you're not interested in having the desire of pulling this closely and holding it close, because as long as the mind is longing with a strong eagerness for pleasant things, then it's going to continue to suffer. It's going to continue to have discontentedness because it sees all these pleasant things in the world and it wants to hold on to them and pull them close. That's the craving, desire, attachment. So an example of this one could be is as you get closer and closer to deciding to move into that third and fourth stage of enlightenment, and you decide to let go of sensual desires. One of the strongest sensual desires that human beings have is the desire to have sexual contact. And because we don't see the body as it truly is, we, in the unenlightened state, have this affection, this desire, this interest in sexual contact, because we see the body as a pleasurable thing, and we focus our attention on the body of another person, and we want to have sex with that body because it's a pleasurable thing that we see it as. But we're not actually seeing true reality. We're just seeing the skin and the hair and the makeup or clothes or whatever we see. So when we have sensual desires still in the mind, we would probably view the physical body as unrepulsive, as pleasant. But what the Buddha teaches in relationship to the physical body is to train the mind to see it as repulsive, right? And repulsive, we tend to look at that as a pretty strong word, right? He may or may not have even used this word. This is the word that the translator is using. The way that I would explain this is see the danger in something pleasant. That's the way I would say this. May I reside perceiving the danger in something pleasant, rather than the repulsive and the unrepulsive. Is may I perceive the danger in the pleasant. Because when you see something pleasant, the mind's just going to experience those pleasant feelings, and it's going to pull and pull and pull and go toward that pleasant thing. And if it acquires it, it's going to be happy, excited, elated, but that's temporary, it's impermanent. If it doesn't get this pleasant thing that it's seeking, then it's going to experience painful feelings, sadness, anger, frustration, right? So related to this whole sexual craving thing, if you see a certain human being that you find really pleasurable and pleasant, and the mind's pulling towards it, if you get it, the mind's going to feel very pleased and pleasant and happy, excited, elated. But if you don't, it's going to feel pain. It's going to feel sadness, anger, frustration. So that's why I would use the words here that say, may I reside perceiving the danger in the pleasant. That's a better way, I think, to say this.
Amina has a follow-up question related to chapter 13. Can we discuss this a little further? As we are household practitioners, it can be a challenge to abandon thoughts surrounding household life.
Yes. So we talked about this here in Chiang Mai a little bit. So here what the Buddha is teaching, remember that he's mainly teaching monks and ordained males and females. There's household practitioners that he's teaching too, but in this particular teaching, they may not have been around. It might have just been the ordained practitioners that he's teaching, and probably so. Or in his discourse, if he had both audiences there, he might have shared this teaching with the ordained practitioners and something else with the household practitioners. what he's basically teaching the ordained practitioners is to let go of the memories of their household life, because if they don't, it's going to hinder them from attaining enlightenment. Because remember, what they're doing in order to attain to ordain is they're leaving behind a home. They may be leaving behind a wife or a husband. They may be leaving behind a child or children. They're leaving behind a career, an occupation, an income. They're leaving behind all these different things, and they're entering into homelessness. And now that they're in this training with the Buddha, roaming around, accepting food from the generosity of people, not knowing where their next meal is going to come from, not knowing where their clothes are going to come from, not even knowing where they're going to sleep or not. As they're roaming around doing this, it's a pretty difficult life. And if their mind is yearning or longing for the past, where they had this comfortable house and they may have had a husband or wife to help take care of them and children and all these comforts of life, if their mind is longing for that, then they're never going to get to enlightenment, because they're going to still experience discontentedness because of that craving, desire, attachment for their previous life as a household practitioner. So what he's teaching them here is to let go of that, cut that off. And that's where what I share in meditation is, if any thoughts of the past come up, to let it go, cut it off, focus the mind on the breath. Because not related to the household life, but even in your life, Amina and everyone else, that there's been certain pleasurable things that have happened in your life in the past that were maybe more pleasurable than what you're experiencing right now in this present moment. And if your mind longs for that, then your mind still has craving, desire, attachment. This is how the mind is that sixth sense. Out of the six sense bases, the mind can long for those pleasant feelings, and now it's going to experience discontentedness because it feels like, oh, my life just isn't as good as it used to be. Oh, I used to have all this other stuff, or I used to have all these other people, or I used to have this better job, or I had this better place to live, or this better situation. And now the mind's frustrated or irritated because it's longing for this thing in the past. So for you, if you're never planning to ordain, which I don't think you are, if you never ordain, then the instruction that you can use here is not to let go of your memories of your household life, but to put the past in the past. That's essentially what the Buddha is teaching here, is put the past in the past. Let it go. Don't hold on to it. Don't crave it. Don't cling to it. Don't aspire to be back at some point in the past. Because not only do we have pleasant things that happen in our past, but we also have painful things that happen in our past. And if our mind goes to that and it resides in the past, it's going to experience discontentedness now in the present moment. So this is one of the reasons why it's so important to train the mind to come into the present moment. Because if it's longing for the past, either pleasurable things or painful things, then it's going to experience discontentedness. And likewise, if it's longing for pleasant things in the future, or if it anticipates painful things happening in the future, it's going to experience discontentedness now in the present moment. So the way to eliminate all of this is to train the mind to be in the present moment, no longer longing or holding on to the past, and no longer longing, holding on to the future, but instead let all that stuff go and just focus the mind on the present moment right now. And that's what this teaching is getting to. And he just so happens to be talking to the ordained practitioners and talking about letting go of household life, because that's one of the probably big challenges or struggles that they're dealing with as ordained practitioners. But you have those same struggles, just related to other things from the past. So that's how you can use this teaching that he's giving to the ordained practitioners as a way of training your mind and alerting you to, yes, I need to let go of anything in the past and just bring the mind to the present moment.
Yes, that's very very clear wisdom as a householder myself. Amina comments, thanks, David. This is clear. Misunderstood that this teaching was for everyone, not specific to those leaving the household.
Yeah.
A wonderful insight, putting the past in the past. Thank you, teacher.
Yeah, you're welcome, Amina. This is where the Buddha oftentimes is teaching the ordained practitioners, but there's things that we can extrapolate from those teachings that help us as well. So, this is for them, but as we just talked, there's definitely something that we can extrapolate from it and use it in our household life.
Nick comments, my mind did that in boot camp. Relative to your example of householder versus ordained person, held on to how much better it was at home, longed to get back home, etc.
Great example, Nick. And I bet during that time your mind was pretty frustrated and irritated, probably with your drill sergeants and blaming the army and the military and everybody else perhaps. But it's your decision, right, to go into the boot camp and military, and it was your mind longing for the past and craving the past that caused that discontentedness that you may have experienced in boot camp. And you probably see that now, but back then you may not have. And that's part of why the mind just suffers and just has continuous discontentedness, because it doesn't yet have right view. And once you establish right view and you see that it's the mind causing all these problems with craving, desire, attachment, or hatred, anger, ill will, this ignorance, delusion, unknowing of true reality, when you start realizing more and more that all these problems are being caused by the mind, that's quite liberating, because now you realize you have complete ability to eradicate this from the mind. That's the beauty in this, is once you establish right view and you realize that your mind is the one causing all of the problems that you're experiencing, that's like, wow, if I'm causing all the problems, that means I can eliminate it. I don't need to go out and change this outside world. I just need to change this inner world. And when I get a handle of that with the wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline, hey, the sky's the limit, and I can experience all kinds of peacefulness because I'm the one who's causing the heartache.
Staying with chapter 13, on page 63, Judith asks, rapture and happiness born of seclusion.
Okay, this is in the part about the jhanas, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes. Does seclusion mean being alone? What does it really mean?
Yeah, what oftentimes, that's what it means. It's seclusion, isolation, solitude. Oftentimes what happens as we start moving into the jhanas is that our life becomes very secluded, we become very isolated, and we experience the interest to be in solitude, where we're no longer interested to go outside necessarily and spend time with all these people, where when we were younger and our mind was craving the outside world and having all these sensual pleasures, the mind just wants to go out and have time, spend time with friends and family, and go to the nightclub and go to this performance and that performance. The mind is just attracted to all these things externally. But as the mind distances itself in this first jhana, as it distances itself from these sensual desires, or another way to say that is sensual pleasures, as the mind starts becoming distanced from this, then we start to experience an interest to be more secluded or in solitude or isolation. And it's not something that you have to do, but it's something that the mind is going to most likely be interested to do. So during this time of COVID, everybody's been kind of put into solitude or seclusion. But even think back before COVID, when things were wide open, were you noticing that you tended to kind of be on your own and kind of not as interested to go outside and spend time doing things, in all these different places? Well, if you've noticed that about your life when things were wide open, then that's because your mind is starting to decrease its interest in sensual pleasures and sensual desires. Oftentimes we are taught that if we try to be isolated or secluded or in solitude, that there's a problem with that, right? But here, it's actually a natural part of the mind awakening, that it does come into seclusion or solitude or isolation. I describe this as a bow tie, that I describe your life as a bow tie, that when you're kind of first born and you're like a teenager and young adult, your life is like wide open and you're like out there just doing all kinds of stuff, wide open. And then as you get older and you start learning some things, your life starts to kind of like come down, and you kind of pare down your friends, you kind of pare down your family, you kind of become more isolated, where you don't necessarily engage with the outside world as much, and your life kind of comes in, and that's the knot, right? That's where things get really challenging, and this is where oftentimes people turn to the Buddhist teachings, because life has become very challenging because it was chasing all these central pleasures for so long. Well, now you do all that work, you do all that inner work to train the mind and transform the mind, become more and more enlightened, and you become very isolated perhaps, or secluded, or in solitude if you do. And then as the mind awakens more and more, then the other side of that bow tie starts to open up, where now you start moving back out into the world, you start having friends and engaging with your family and coworkers, but now you're doing it through this trained mind, this more awakened mind, where now you understand how to hold wholesome relationships. And this part of your life starts to open up and blossom, right? This is essentially what the Buddha did. This is what Jesus did. This is what Prophet Muhammad did. Every single one of them, they had a certain life. Then they went into some kind of solitude. The Buddha went away into the forest, right? He was around people and learning for 2 years, but then for 4 years, he went into seclusion, into solitude, into isolation. Then, as his mind attained enlightenment, he stepped back out and his life expanded and opened back up again. Jesus did the same thing. Jesus went out into the desert, right? I think it was like 40 days or something like that, where he went into solitude and seclusion. And I feel like, and I kind of remember the story of Prophet Muhammad doing something similar, if I remember correctly. So where you can use this is, don't feel like you have to go into seclusion, but if you notice that you're kind of more interested in staying secluded or isolated or in solitude, just know that that's normal, and it's a normal part of awakening the mind. And as you awaken more and more, then your life will kind of start to blossom again as you move back out this other side of the bow tie.
Judith has a question on the end of this chapter, page 68. She asks, what is a feeling terminating with the body or with life?
Okay, I'm going to have to find that because I'm not using the print. Oh, there it is. When a feeling, I think it's the second to last paragraph, right? Yeah. Okay, when he feels a feeling terminating with the body, he understands, I feel a feeling terminating with the body. So this is when there's a bodily sensation and you notice that with awareness of mind, then you know it. You know that that feeling is terminating. So when he feels a feeling terminating with the body, he understands, I feel a feeling terminating with the body. So you have awareness of the bodily sensations. When he feels a feeling terminating with life, he understands, I feel a feeling terminating with life. He understands with the breakup of the body. Okay, so I understand this. So he understands with the breakup of the body, following the exhaustion of life, all that is felt, not being delighted in, will become cool right there. This is describing someone who's getting comfortable with death and comfortable with the impermanence of this physical body, and understanding that that's just part of this life. And when he's saying will become cool right there, what he's referring to is the craving anger, and ignorance, we often talk about these as fires and extinguishing the fires. So he's talking in that first sentence about understanding bodily sensations and the terminating of those bodily sensations, being aware of the body and the bodily sensations. Then he's talking about feelings terminating with life, that, hey, this life is going to come to an end, and I can't hold on to this life. I can't crave existence, because as long as you crave existence, as you get closer and closer to death, you're going to experience discontentedness because the mind's holding on to this life. And then the third sentence, he understands with the breakup of the body, following the exhaustion of life, all that is felt, not being delighted in, will become cool right there. Like the elimination of the physical body, the elimination of the consciousness, everything will be ended right there at death. There's no more for this state of existence. Once you attain enlightenment, it's done. There's no more. Okay? No more for this existence.
It doesn't appear like there is any more questions on Zoom, but I believe Bassam has a question.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Rahman. Teacher, let's start from chapter 2.
Okay.
Yes, page 7, last 2 paragraphs.
Okay, page 7, because you're using this PDF, so that helps me. Last 2 paragraphs. Okay.
Yeah. Here the Buddha is talking about when maintaining mindfulness of breath, there may be some possibilities. Maybe attaining Nibbana in this current life, and this one is clear. Maybe attaining Nibbana in at the time of death, and this one is also clear. These ones in the interval, or upon landing, or without struggle, or maybe with effort. So maybe these points need some clarification.
Yeah, so this is a good paragraph to see the preceding paragraphs that he's talking about. So let's go through this. So if one does not attain final knowledge, that's enlightenment, when he's talking about final knowledge, because at that point you have all the wisdom, you've eradicated ignorance, because ignorance is the main hindrance, or this unknowing of true reality is the main hindrance to enlightenment. So once someone's attained final knowledge or final wisdom, then they've unraveled that whole chain of dependent origination that starts with ignorance and ends up with birth, aging, and death. So if somebody's attained final knowledge, they've attained enlightenment. So the Buddha is here saying, if one does not attain final knowledge early in this life, right? Because he's talking in the previous parts of this of like what you can do in order to attain enlightenment early in this life, or at the time of death, because you can also attain enlightenment at the time of death, or become an attainer of Nibbana in the interval. I honestly don't know what this is, Nibbana in the interval, unless it's like from one life to the next. But I think that there's something that we're not understanding here in the translations. Going back to, even Bhikkhu Bodhi, perhaps we could ask Bhikkhu Bodhi this question, because you either have attained Nibbana or not. And if you've attained Nibbana, then there is no more rebirth. And what this is kind of sounding like is that you're kind of attaining Nibbana between these lives. And I haven't seen anything like that. It doesn't make sense based on everything that I know and I understand that there would be some kind of temporary enlightenment. Although, you can kind of experience that for a few hours or a few days. You feel like the mind's pretty enlightened and then you get discontent. So perhaps it's something like that. Or become an attainer of Nibbana upon landing. This makes it sound like, once you land in your new rebirth, that there's going to be the attainment of enlightenment there, right? In this new existence, right? That's what I think that's referring to. Or become an attainer of nibbana without struggle, right? So that's when he's referring to the subsequent paragraphs where he's talking about what can be accomplished through breathing mindfulness meditation is that you can, in your next life, attain enlightenment without struggling because you've benefited from the results of having trained in this life. Then with the complete destruction of the 5 lower fetters, which means you're now a you're a non-returner, one becomes an attainer of nibbana with effort. So if you're a non-returner, you're still going to be reborn. You're going to be reborn into the heavenly realm. And at that point, you can attain enlightenment with effort. So these are kind of like the different aspects of the attainment of enlightenment that the Buddha talks about in relationship to rebirth. And essentially helping you to see in the previous paragraphs that all the work that you're doing now is going to result in either enlightenment very early in this life, enlightenment at death, enlightenment in the interval, whatever that is, becoming an attainer of nibbana upon landing in your next rebirth, become an attainer of nibbana in your next rebirth without struggling, or the attainer of nibbana in your next life with some effort. Okay? So that's the various benefits that can be accumulated through training and practicing breathing mindfulness meditation as it relates to the attainment of nibbana and rebirth.
Okay. Next question is from chapter 13.
Popular chapter today.
Yeah, in chapter 13, there is a mention of Bodhisattva.
Yes. Here. Okay, so the Buddha is talking here about his experience prior to enlightenment. So let me just read it for people. I too, monks, before my enlightenment, while I was still a bodhisattva, not yet fully enlightened, generally dwelt in this dwelling. Dwelt in this dwelling is breathing mindfulness meditation. That's what he considers his dwelling. Okay? While I generally dwelt in this dwelling, neither my body nor my eyes became fatigued, and my mind, by not clinging, was liberated from the taints or the fetters. Therefore, monks, if a monk wishes, may neither my body nor my eyes become fatigued, and may my mind, by not clinging, be liberated from the taints. This same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. So I know your question's about Bodhisattva Basam, but let me just share what the Buddha is talking about here is that by practicing breathing mindfulness meditation, his body was tranquil, right? His body and his mind was tranquil. It wasn't fatigued. That's what he's talking about here. My body nor my eyes became fatigued, and my mind, by not clinging, was liberated by the taints. And he talks about this as part of the benefits of enlightenment, is experiencing this tranquility of the body. And then he encourages, in the second paragraph, he encourages the monks that, hey, if you're looking for these same benefits where neither your body nor your eyes become fatigued and your mind becomes liberated, then you should practice breathing mindfulness meditation in order to develop this same concentration that he accomplished. Attend to this closely. So this is the Buddha not pushing his teachings, not forcing his teachings, just saying, hey, this worked for me, so it will work for you too, and you should attend to it closely. What a bodhisattva is in the Theravada tradition, we don't really talk about bodhisattvas much because the whole goal is to actually attain enlightenment and end this whole discontentedness and in this whole cycle of rebirth. But a bodhisattva in the Mahayana tradition has very specific meaning, where I will let those folks explain what they mean by that, what a bodhisattva is in their tradition. But for us, what the Buddha is just basically explaining here is before his enlightenment. And he's just referencing himself as a bodhisattva at that point. And if you haven't studied what a bodhisattva is in the Mahayana tradition, those folks can help you understand it. What I understand from their tradition is that they consider this to be a person who has chosen not to attain enlightenment in this life, but yet help other people to attain enlightenment, which I say isn't possible, because how could you teach someone to drive a car if you've never driven a car before? So it's not possible for someone to help someone else to attain enlightenment if they haven't attained it themselves, because they don't know how to attain enlightenment for themselves. How could they ever help somebody else attain it? So that's typically what people talk about as a bodhisattva, but just use this as a way of understanding the Buddha was talking about before his enlightenment.
Okay. Next question is from chapter 13.
Chapter 13?
Yes, chapter 13. Residing in the formless perception. This paragraph is not clear.
Where do you see that? Is it here? It is. Okay.
Yes, here, teacher.
Which paragraph?
Residing in the formless perception.
Residing in the formless perception. Oh, formless perception. Am I at the right spot? You mean the whole, all four paragraphs aren't clear to you, or is there one particular paragraph that isn't clear?
No, it's actually all the way not clear.
Okay, so there's the four jhanas that we've talked about in our group learning program, which is on Sunday and Wednesday, and we've talked about the 4 stages of enlightenment, and these are things that you guys have learned through the teachings that I've shared so far. And the 4 jhanas are these preliminary phases that the mind goes through before it enters into the first stage of enlightenment, second, third, and fourth. These formless perceptions are something that's in addition to the jhanas. It's kind of like between the jhanas in the 4 stages of enlightenment. And in each one of these formless perceptions, there's various realizations that happen. And you can think of them as realizations or perceptions. It's the same thing. And I don't really teach these because there's really nothing that you need to actively do in order to experience these. And there's it's just either going to happen for you or it's not going to happen. And you don't have to experience all of these formless perceptions in order to attain enlightenment, because in one of these formless perceptions or these realizations, people actually experience observation of their past lives. And not everybody needs to experience these in order to attain enlightenment, but some people do experience these. So I don't teach these in detail, but as you're progressing through the jhanas and then you're perhaps moving into the 4 stages of enlightenment, if you're talking with me privately and there's something that you're talking about that's related to one of these formless perceptions or these realizations, I will clue you into it. But there's really no need to go into any kind of level of detail explaining these as a generalized teaching. And that's why you don't really see them very much in the Buddha's teachings, because he talks about them here and there, but he doesn't really go into a significant amount of detail about them, because you're either going to experience them or you're not. And there's nothing that you actively need to do other than all the other teachings that are part of the main path to actually experience these.
Okay, thanks, teacher. No more questions on Zoom, but since there are questions, there's a question on Zoom. So let's go to Manal.
It doesn't appear there are any more questions, Teacher David.
Okay, so next week we're going to be studying chapters 17 through 32 in this book. So if you have this book, go ahead and read from now until next week, chapter 17 through 32. If you don't have this book yet, you can download it, as I mentioned, in the Facebook group. Go to the files menu and you'll see it there, and you can download this book. Because these words of the Buddha, while it's a little bit of a mystery sometimes, and it's kind of fun to kind of go through and really investigate these teachings and kind of figure out what the Buddha was teaching, there's some that are a little bit more challenging to do that with. There's others that are just really clear, very concise, and the vast majority of them are. But in reading through the Buddha's teachings, you'll gain a lot of insight and understanding of what he was actually sharing during his lifetime. And then, like what Bassam just asked about, if there are certain things that you're struggling with and your teacher can just tell you, you don't have to worry about this, you don't have to think about this one, don't even worry about diving into that, that can actually save you a lot of effort and energy, that you don't have to chase down the rabbit hole and try to figure out what this is, because your teacher is telling you that you don't need to know this in order to attain enlightenment. But if it comes up, then I will use that opportunity to share it with you on a one-on-one basis, as you might perhaps need these teachings. So this way it keeps you focused on the core teachings. So continue to investigate these teachings, continue to learn with the words of the Buddha, because his words are very illuminating and really help to expand your understanding and really help to shed light on his path, because it's his actual words. But remember that we're 2,500 years away from the time when Gotama Buddha actually lived. So there was a whole lot of impermanence that happened from there until now. And one of the things that we're doing in this tradition of Theravada Buddhist teachings is different practitioners like Bhikkhu Bodhi and others are working to improve upon the translations that we have to make the Buddha's words more and more potent and more penetrating and more applicable to helping you to attain enlightenment now. And that's part of what I'm doing in my teaching, is helping to bring the Buddha's teachings from 2,500 years ago into today, not changing them, not modifying them, but trying to put them under a magnifying glass to really understand them as deeply as possible, so that we can get the most insight as possible from what he was actually teaching. So that's where you really benefit from learning the words of the Buddha in English, as we're doing in this program. And that's also why it's really important that you, at the same time that you're learning this program or prior, that you learn with a book like this, so that you have a real foundation and a real framework, and you're not just kind of out there learning from the Pali Canon by itself, because people will explain to you that there's no real organization to the Pali Canon, because it was just kind of put together as, almost an afterthought. After the Buddha died, people were like, oh my goodness, we don't have anything written down. Like, we should put something down in writing. It would have been wonderful during the Buddha's lifetime for somebody to have written down a lot of his teachings, because then the Buddha could have contributed to organizing and systematizing his teachings and really laying them out in a clear way. But we never got that during his lifetime. So it's important that you have a teacher and that you have a book like this that provides you a framework and a schematic or a foundation in the teachings, so that then as you're learning the words of the Buddha, you can plug this in to the various aspects of the path that you're already familiar with. And that's what we're doing in this program. And it's all based on your independent pursuit, your independent learning, and taking the time, like a PhD program, for you to go off and study and learn and try to figure out as much as you can. And then you just use this Saturday class as a way to clarify anything that needs to be clarified. And tomorrow in our group learning program on Sunday, we'll be studying chapter 3, which is where I'll do an actual talk based on the actual teachings, where I'm real really guiding you through the path to enlightenment. And tomorrow's talk is about Nibbana, or what is enlightenment, or Nibbana. We're going to be spending that talk discussing what is enlightenment or what is Nibbana, and helping you to understand it more and more clearly, because the more you understand the goal of what Nibbana is, the more likely you'll be able to train the mind to actually get there. And we're going to be focusing on the 7 factors of enlightenment tomorrow, because that's something that we left out of a previous talk. So we're going to be spending some time talking about the 7 factors of enlightenment. And then on Wednesday is our 4th session of our 4-part series to develop your loving kindness meditation practice. And that's what we're going to be doing on next Wednesday. And then next Saturday, we'll be in chapter 17 and through 32 of this book. So I'll see you either Sunday, Wednesday, or Saturday, perhaps all 3 of those days. And until then, have a really wonderful rest of your day. Have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.